Welcome to the Opal Special Awards Program, an awards program that is dedicated to firms and designers who do outstanding and game-changing work in their particular field of expertise. The special awards candidates are exclusively nominated by our esteemed jury panel. Collectively, the jury puts together a short list of firms they believe is worthy this coveted prize. Only one winner is selected. In today's edition of the series, we will announce the prize winner in the discipline of innovation. The award is given to a developer, architect, or interior designer that embraces innovation, shaping the future through the use of new technologies, design principles, and materials, and who is a true inspiration for others to follow. Without further ado, I will pass the reins to our Opal jury member, Raha Talebi, who will announce the innovation winner, followed by an interview. Let's have a look.
Hello, I would want to introduce myself. I'm Raha Talebi. I'm an Opal jury member for the 2020 Opal Special Award in Innovation. I am personally a founding principal of the architecture design studio Ventihem Talebi. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that Farshid Musavi, who is joining us currently, the founder of FMA, has been nominated by her peers and won the 2020 Special Opal Award in Innovation.
Well, thank you, Raha, and thanks to all members of the jury for bestowing this award on me. It's an honor. Especially because it comes from my peers. To be recognized by them, it means a lot to me. Thank you.
So we thought that we would, as this is a virtual dialogue, have a few short questions specifically about innovation. And I think the initial obvious question to ask one is, as an innovator yourself, how do you define the term innovation in your practice?
Yes, it's good to dwell on the word innovation because it is used in a way too often to the extent that it can sound meaningless. But I think that it is a good word because if I were to define it, I would say it is about being positively different. It is about embracing change. It is about, because it is about making something different, it also means you are not starting from scratch or as if there is nothing there. You are acknowledging that there is a present, and in it there are certain things, objects, organizations, that are perhaps in need of a shift because architecture needs to stay, let's say, in touch and in sync with many processes of change that may be coming from different kinds of arena. They might be of an environmental nature, of a technical nature, of a social or societal nature. And it means accepting the present, but also recognizing that the present needs to shift. So it is a good word. I think that through this process of innovation or bringing about change or changing the existing to something different, we are also making reality more diverse in many different ways, adding new possibilities, new things there that would otherwise not be there. So I think it's good. It's good that the award is trying to insist that it is a good way to think about or to think through architecture.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I believe that, it's arguably you influence an entire generation of architects and you hit the ground running already when Foreign Office architects started with the invention of Yokohama, the Yokohama terminal, as a pure invention in terms of material, pushing zoning boundaries. So you started off with a sort of a heavy load that a lot of people embraced. And so I think that was sort of the forerunner, obviously. And it continued when you co-headed FOA with the Leicester project that was innovative, not only in its material use, but also just to consider that type of typology for architecture. That's already a radical approach. Um, and, you know, as you follow your career with FMA, wildly different programs, wildly different scales with Victoria Beckham store, to the two very special housing projects that you've been doing in France that are completely different animals, each and of its own right. So again, this term innovation, for lack of a better word, starts to define you as an undefinable force, which I think is so exciting. And I wonder if in these projects there's sort of, because you're such an amazing storyteller, if
No,
there's
I'm not
like innovative stories, you know, something that comes to mind in these projects that we can like sort of relate to, as architects and designers. I'm sure there's hundreds, but
Yeah, I mean, I think the discussion is difficult to reduce, to you know, to a kind of, let's say, a quick slogan, because I think that you know, fundamental to what you've just said about our work spans over different kinds of typologies, functional typologies, is the fact that architecture is fundamentally about everyday life, and it's not about, you know, architecture as opposed to building is about everyday life, and everyday life happens in many different kinds of arenas. It happens when we in you know, it should exist where the places where we live, the places we work, places we go and experience you know, exhibitions, places where we travel from, to and from, you know, places where we shop. These are all parts of our arenas of the everyday, and I think good architecture should be situating itself and claiming its relevance by working and acting within and you know, these kind of arenas. So the John Lewis department store is about rethinking you know, the department store. At the time, you know, department stores were inward looking, and it's about trying to mitigate the need to give the store itself the possibility to have kind of flexibility of how they would change their displays, not introduce clutter to the street, and also give them the flexibility that in some areas, some departments, they may not want natural light. In some areas, they might want natural light, and yet recognize that people who go to shop would want to, you know, be aware of the time of the day it is. They would want to be aware of where they are shopping, so that it's not like you are, you know, in a no place, as if you are shopping in the internet. The more we've had gradually the possibility of shopping online, the more it has become necessary to distinguish physical retail from, you know, online retailing. And so, you know, the kind of external envelope of the building is very much about negotiating between these two different demands, and therefore it's, you know, it's an envelope that has a kind of a mirror fit pattern on it. It's on, happens on several layers, and this allows you to see out clearly, but from the outside it produces a kind of a moire, and it becomes a screen like a net curtain that you don't quite see in. And this kind of you know, way of thinking, which is about situating ourselves in, you know, within the process of thinking about each one of these kinds of building from different kinds of perspectives, embracing all the kind of the codes and the conventions and the axioms that come with them in order to recognize what actually does need to be changed. Is to think about, the situation almost forensically from different angles, so that we find out where it is that, we need to act. And they are different, and that's why a project that we do in the retail sector will always be different in form and in kind of action, if you like, to one that we would do for a museum. But they are like-minded in terms of process, in terms of attitude towards always trying to find, where our actions could be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Even with when you speak about the process of Leicester, I also recognize the process of the museum of contemporary, the MoCA Museum as well. I mean, it goes back to rethinking to the core what that museum needs or what that store needs to actually make an imprint within
Yes, I mean,
the
MoCA,
experience.
if we compare it in a kind of to the one of Leicester,
Yeah.
It's a private museum, and it's in an area of Cleveland which is affluent, University Circle, but it is very close by to neighborhoods that are not so affluent. And when we started working with the museum, well, being a private museum, there was an entry fee charged for for seeing exhibitions.
Right.
And coming from being based in London, and knowing that here museums are free to access, we wanted to bring this kind of possibility to people who may be deterred from entering the museum because of the need to pay a fee. And so, it was about thinking, well, if we would organize the museum on 4 levels instead of 1, and if we would locate the paid gallery at the top floor, we would allow people to enter and experience the museum without having to pay an entry fee. And then it was about saying, well, we want them to experience art, and can we question this tendency of putting all the art in an air-conditioned kind of gallery at a time when much of contemporary art doesn't even need air conditioning. And how can we design all the spaces outside of the main gallery as a venue for art? So it just kind of, interrogating all these questions so that we would have a more inclusive museum. And, after 10 years, MoCA actually waived completely the fee for the exhibitions, and now they're entirely free. And I'd like to think that the building spearheaded that, of that decision. And so it brings art out of the gallery, it takes people into the museum, it spills art. You worked on the project, so you know all about it.
That was a pleasure. But I mean, that's why I think that it's a core thinking. It's a rigorous self-criticality of somehow it's not just about beauty and aesthetics, it goes beyond that. And I think that's what makes your work so extremely exciting. I mean, no doubt, and I'm not sure how well known it is now. I mean, it's getting quite well known, but the idea that FMA has a natural research arm, function lab, that is of, that's obviously second nature to you. And I want to know, because I'm not in your office any longer, how that actually works in the office. Is it, how does that influence your practice and vice versa?
It's not as structured as you would imagine, just because the idea of research came about from teaching. I've taught ever since I've started my own practice. So the two have always been seamless, and they, they feed each other. And it started at the office because I recognized that there is this exchange between my teaching, which always was kind of research oriented, and the practice, and that I didn't, because I teach only half a year and I don't teach in the other half a year, I didn't want that to stop in the other half year. So over time, I thought that, we had developed the discipline to be able to do it ourselves all year, and it didn't have to depend on deadlines of me having to deliver a course at Harvard. And it's really very much about creating a more slower pace of thinking about architecture, which day-to-day practice doesn't allow you to do. Day-to-day practice has to be by nature more reactive. It's reactive to problems that we are given, and research can be also proactive. It can also look for perhaps ideas or problems that we find interesting, and we could investigate them at a slower pace than the day-to-day demand of practice. It's also a space where we can share with people outside of our office, and we can invite people from outside of our office to kind of explore again the idea of research. So it's a kind of a floating, it's a floating space in which we can investigate, we can share, we can have dialogue with other people about architectural, issues.
Yeah. And I guess maybe one of Functions Lab's natural questions to come will be post-pandemic life, or this virtual reality that we're all committed to for maybe this 2 years ongoing. The very nature of this conversation being virtual. I wonder, and some people have taken various stances, whether the pandemic would influence architecture or architectural research. It's a question, how directly influenced we will be by this. And yourself as an innovative brain could maybe give us some clues.
Yeah, well, I don't know how architects will change. I mean, I mean, at the most basic level, I think we now have options. A year ago, I would have never thought a group of people would be able to work remotely on an architectural project, and well, we have been, and so have millions of other people. So that, of course, will mean perhaps many will question the idea of having a big office, physical office. Maybe we will use our offices in a different way. Maybe we will be far more relaxed about the idea of flexible working, partly at home, partly at the office. So I think that those are to do with ourselves. But in terms of the built environment, I mean, it's clear that because many people will continue to work at home, either permanently or partially, maybe we will need to rethink what an apartment is, for example. Houses give you a lot of options, but apartments have become smaller and smaller as the real estate market has been let me just say it more, very bluntly, more and more shrewd. I think that we need to really think about what people want of an apartment. There are so many conventions that are completely outmoded, like the day and night split of an apartment. That doesn't really work for everybody. The kind of the standard apartment is also designed around the idea of a nuclear family. And there are so many other ways of, living today that is not just about, being a family. And so I think that the housing market, in terms of its conception, is, in my opinion, completely out of sync with life. And the development market needs a push usually in order for it to change. It becomes too rigid. And I think that if the pandemic hasn't been enough of a push, I don't know, what it would be. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to think about, whether we shouldn't be designing dual use spaces, places where we can work and live. And this, of course, affects not only, how we design and deliver homes, but also, it goes back to planning, and because you need, kind of to give up entirely the idea of a monofunctional city. I think the workspace will have to change, probably. And we know that, the future of retail space is uncertain. So in terms of the future, the silver lining to the pandemic is that it has opened up so many doors for rethinking the built environment. So that we will have a lot to do, for sure.
Well, that's very exciting. I could speak with you for much, much longer. And I will do so, but not on this recording. So thank you so much for your time, Farshid. It was a pleasure to present you this award.
Thank you, Raha, and to everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you.